Good, still kind of morning, everybody. For Dryden.com, I'm Ben Dryden, and we're being joined by Wisconsin conservative talk show radio host Dan O'Donnell today, September 20th, 2022. Special thank you to some of our guests this month, including Congressman Tom Tiffany, AFP Wisconsin State Director Eric Bott, Barron County Sheriff Chris Fitzgerald, Pastor Brian Cole, Spooner Memorial Library Director Miss Angie, Democrat nominee for Wisconsin's 30th Assembly District Sarah Yakub, and of course last week we had Adam Jarko and Joel Clayfish coming on discussing Triple J Outfitters, which was it's a full hunting service for those seeking to experience, I don't know, hunting gators and hogs in Florida or something. So that was a really enlightening show because I don't hunt at all. So that was awesome. You can watch a recording of those and all of our previous live shows on our website, Dryden.com, on our YouTube channel, youtube.com/DrydenWire, or right here on our Facebook page. But today we're chatting with Dan O'Donnell from the Dan O'Donnell Show. Dan, good morning, sir.
Hey, thanks so much for having me, Ben. It's a pleasure to be on with you.
It's so bizarre because I was literally just listening to your show an hour ago, and now I'm talking to you, and I've never talked to you before. We had a quick 5-minute chat just setting this up, so I love that because I want to get to know someone organically. So thank you so much for joining us. So for people who don't know you, and I do have some, like in my mind, I don't write questions down, but some things I want to ask you about, like hosts and stuff like that. But for people who don't know you, who are you? That's a pretty general question there. Yeah.
It's like, okay, well, how much time you got, Ben?
As much as you need.
As you said, I am a talk radio host. I do a political-based show from a conservative perspective. My tagline, which I sort of see as a mission statement, is conservative thought, not just talk. So what I try to do is to provide a reasoned, fact-based analysis of the issues of the day. I'm based in Milwaukee, Wisconsin, a suburb of Milwaukee called Greenfield. In fact, I'm sitting in my office, so you probably see the pictures of my kids and all sorts of stuff behind me. I'm the proud father of 3 great kids. I'm very happily married to my college sweetheart and have been for many, many years. And the type of show I do is political in nature, but we'll also talk about sports. We'll talk about cultural issues. We'll make jokes and have some fun. And I air on News Talk 1130 WISN in Milwaukee and 1310 WIBA in Madison from 9 a.m. to 11 a.m. We're always looking to add stations. You can also find me, your listeners, your viewers can probably find me in northwestern Wisconsin or western Wisconsin, or wherever you might be, the North Woods, wherever, on your iHeartRadio app, or really wherever you get podcasts, Spotify, iTunes. But I work for iHeartMedia, which owns iHeartRadio, so I'm contractually obligated to say you better be listening to me on iHeartRadio.
Oh, see, that part I did not know. So I listen to you if I get a chance to. But by the way, and I'll get to that in a little bit here, I didn't even know about you, so I apologize about that. You didn't know about us probably until like last week when I texted you. But until like 4 months ago, Adam Jarko texted, hey, just let you know, because he was still in the AG's race, and he said, I'm going to be on the Dan O'Donnell Show. I said, what's Dan O'Donnell Show? So that's when he had said, yeah, just go here. So I didn't know, and now I listened to it quite a bit. Looks like we lost you. We just got Tom Tiffany'd. Oh, boy. Dan, I don't know if you can still hear us, but you just went black. And he's out. Seriously, live shows. That's it. I'm just going to start recording these things from now on. This is getting ridiculous. He'll sign back in a second. Dan, all right, so it's on WISN. I should have it written down in the event that he signed out. It's on WISN, but apparently it's contractually obligated for iHeart. So literally just Google Dan O'Donnell Show. That's what I do almost every morning when I just want to go on, turn on and listen to him. It's Dan O'Donnell Show. Just Google that, and you'll have one for WISN and the other one's for iHeart Radio. Both of them air it, but actually I did not know. And when he comes back on, I want to ask him about that. That he's actually has a contract with iHeart Radio, which I didn't know that was a thing. I thought iHeart Radio was just, it's like Apple Podcast or something. It's just some place where you put your recorded shows, or like when I put ours on YouTube, I just assume that's where it is. But he worked for WSM, but apparently that was wrong. So, Uh-oh, we still don't see him back on here. Oh, no. Well, nope, and there we go, and he's not. I have no idea what just happened. So in the meantime, if you want to Google Dan O'Donnell Show, you may be able to, I'm just trying to see if there's anything on our end we can do to help. I don't think that there is. So we're just going to have to wait a little bit. I do want to ask him when he comes back. Oh, I should write that down. On, was it Wednesdays? Wednesday. Hey, there you are.
All right. Sorry about that. We're having some serious technical issues, which, of course, will only happen on a live podcast.
Of course. Yeah. Even when you were gone, I'm like, yep, live show. What are you going to do?
Yeah, exactly.
You got Tom Tiffany.
Yeah, I had heard the story before we started recording, and I'm glad that I'm in esteemed company of having technical issues.
Yeah.
So Congressman Tiffany is a great guy and obviously has the same thing. Yes, I am a professional broadcaster, and this is why I do radio and not television. So I had, I had a fancy 4K setup with a lavalier mic.
Oh.
Here, take a look. Yeah,
What?
I've got the nice mic right here, which I can basically toss out because now I'm just on my laptop's integrated camera, which is the only thing that works.
Oh, yeah, we tried it in the test.
This has actually been. I'm in a way glad this happened because this is the sort of thing that people don't really think about. What goes into a live broadcast, and sometimes things that you have to deal with on a daily basis. Like half of my job is dealing with the technical stuff that you need to deal with in order to get a show on the air, Yeah, so not only are you a host, you've got to be a producer, you've got to be an engineer, you've got to be dealing with all of this stuff.
And I want to get to that right after this question because I only brought it up because I was trying to I don't know, can't have dead air when somebody's not on, so I was just rambling. But I want to go back to what you said about iHeartRadio. I did not know that. I did not know that you have a contract. I think that's what you had said. Or you, I don't know, work for iHeartRadio. I thought it was the opposite. I thought it was WISN pays my salary. And also, you can find my podcast on iHeart. It's the opposite of that.
That's how a lot of them work.
That's what I assumed.
WISN was owned for many, many years by the Hearst Corporation, which was obviously William Randolph Hearst's newspaper outfit. Sure. And then it started getting in the radio and television industry as those technologies developed. Radio about 100 years ago, and then television in the 1950s, 1960s. The Hearst Corporation sold to an explicitly radio company called Clear Channel. Clear Channel, probably about 9-10 years ago, developed the iHeartRadio app, which allowed people to stream radio stations online. And this was part of one of the guys who was credited with developing this technology is someone you probably know, Mark Cuban, who is the owner of the Dallas Mavericks. He's also on, totally drawing a blank here, Shark Tank on ABC. He developed broadcast.com, which allowed for live broadcasting over the internet. iHeartRadio, maybe a decade or so later, came up with the technology to allow the live simultaneous streaming of radio stations. And in about 2014, 2015, Clear Channel decided to, because it saw the iHeart app as the wave of the future, change its name to iHeartMedia. Now, you would think I would remember the exact date because I can still remember being called into an all company-wide meeting, and the CEO of the company, Bob Pittman, the same guy who helped found MTV in the early 1980s, he's our CEO. He called us in. He said, guess what? We're changing our name from Clear Channel to iHeartMedia. And I should remember that because 2 days before, literally 2 days before, I had about 1,000 business cards sent to my office that said, Dan O'Donnell, Clear Channel Radio, that I had to immediately throw out and get new business cards that said iHeartMedia. So yeah, that's sort of a brief story of our company.
So get into that if you would, please. This is one of the reasons I couldn't wait to have you on. First, it's, you know what it's like when you have politicians on or candidates on, specifically candidates on. After a while, it's okay.
Yeah.
Okay, and that's fine. But it's nice talking shop a little bit, and I've never had that opportunity, and I don't understand how you can do what you do, and that is you do 5 shows a week, Monday through
Hmm.
Friday, 2 hours long, and you do have guests on, and that's when I started
Occasionally, yeah.
listening to you a lot. That was during the campaign. You do these, campaign, not debates, or actually I think they kind of were debates, right? I
Yeah, I
saw
did
Adam
do a couple.
Jarkow and Eric Tony and what's the name of it? Chippewa Falls, the other one running in the AG's race. You had them
Aaron Wheeler.
in. Yep, there we go. So that's when I first started listening and watching you, and now you still have guests on. I've seen you have like Eric Bott on and the Will Martins and etc. on, but a lot of it, especially lately, because you'll probably start having more on starting soon, getting close to the November election. You're really, dude, you're just out there by yourself for two
Yeah.
hours, which there's two components to this I want to get into. One is how do you do a show for 2 hours without a guest? Like, who are you talking to? I mean, in your mind when you're talking, do you script everything? And then the second part we'll get into in a minute
No.
is, of course, the production part of it. I don't think people probably understand, and you kind of alluded to that earlier. You just don't come into the office at 8:45 in the morning, get a cup of coffee,
Start
sit
talking.
down, and go, okay, someone hit all the buttons and do everything, and you start, and then 11 o'clock the show finishes, and you're like, and I'm out here going home, see you tomorrow morning. So whichever one of those you want to tackle first, but I want to get to both of those.
Boy, that's
It's a
a
lot to
lot there.
unpack.
So first of all, when you think you're doing a 2-hour show, really each hour in radio has 43 minutes because you've got 6 minutes right at the top of the hour for the news and commercial break. And then there are 3 commercial breaks of about 5 minutes in length each during the course of the hour. So that only leaves about 40 to 42, 43 minutes of actual content. So, I mean, it's just like a sitcom. Half-hour sitcom is actually, I think it's
20,
21 minutes,
21,
something like
22,
that,
yeah,
20,
yeah.
21 minutes, 22 minutes, whatever it is. So for 2 hours, I'm actually only doing about 80 to 84 minutes of
That's it?
actual content. That's it. Yeah, right. Uh, but when it comes to, filling that time, it's not about whether or not I have a guest to talk to. There's always something to talk about, but the key is doing the research to be knowledgeable enough to talk about it in that way that I said, a fact based, reasoned, logical manner. So the way I sort of see what I do is I'm presenting news to my audience that they might not know, that they might not have heard about. And I'm going to assume that they probably have some knowledge of the biggest headlines of the day. For example, the biggest national story right now is Florida's Governor Ron DeSantis flying a group of
Right.
48 Venezuelan migrants to Martha's Vineyard and the fallout from that. So I'll start by assuming that every one of my listeners knows at least a little something about that. I'll do a brief introduction of the topic where I'll explain what's going on, why you should care, what this says. But then my job is to present it in a way that makes the case for whatever I believe is the correct solution to this, the correct perspective to have on this. And it's about presenting what my views are, what my opinion is, in a way that's both entertaining and informative. And the only way to be able to do that is to present it logically and to have a discussion. Toward that end, I'm talking to thousands and thousands and
Yeah.
thousands of people, right? But I have a producer who is Dave Michaels, longtime radio guy, real good friend. He's fantastic. And he's across the glass from me. And I'm looking at Dave as sort of the avatar for the audience, right?
Got it.
Yeah, he's the guy I'm talking to. I'm lecturing, just like I'm talking to you. I'm having a conversation with Dave. While I'm doing a monologue to keep it conversational, I'm talking to him. And
Got
if
it.
he has a question, if he has a comment, I'll address that. You don't hear him on the air because it sounds a little cluttered when people, you've got the producer just randomly interrupting you. Um, but for on the migrant story, there's a sheriff in Bexar County, Texas. He's an elected Democrat, and he announced late yesterday
Yeah.
that he was going to launch a criminal investigation of the Florida Governor Ron DeSantis, who's a Republican. right? My perspective on this is that it's obviously politically motivated. There is no criminal statute that's been violated. It's not human trafficking. It's not kidnapping. This is all politics. I just told you that, and it took a grand total of 15 seconds, right?
Right. So what do you do for the next 83 minutes?
Right. I've got another 14 minutes to talk about this.
Yeah.
So what I did was to actually look up Texas law to say, okay, what is it that he could potentially be violating? But then I actually listened to the press conference from this sheriff about halfway through, after he announces this big investigation into Ron DeSantis and the governor of Texas, Greg Abbott, as well. He takes a question from a reporter. The reporter asks very simply, well, what laws did they violate? And the sheriff says, well, we're not actually sure what laws, but we're going to keep looking, and there might be no laws that were violated. Well, obviously, that sort of informs how I'm going to do the topic. We were making fun of the sheriff, but making a broader, more serious point, and that is, look, this is clearly a political stunt. Just like someone like this sheriff would say that what DeSantis is doing is a political stunt, this is a political stunt, but he's using the power of law enforcement in a very inappropriate way, what I believe to be a fishing expedition. So that's the way I'd go about a specific topic like that. And it's
hold on, if I can interrupt you real quick, just on that topic, or on that. Anywhere in that press release, or did the sheriff talk about communication with the DA? Because the DA is the one who has to, charge.
No,
that's kind of how that works. I mean, certainly that's perfectly fine. Sheriff's office or law enforcement investigates something. But typically when it's a big case like this, a chief or a sheriff, obviously sheriff's counties, chiefs municipalities, they're going to have conversations with their district attorney to find out, what do you need from me in order for me to bring something to you? Did he state anything in there? Oh, okay.
No, doesn't sound like he talked, because he admitted at least 2 different times during that press conference that he has no idea what law was violated or what law was potentially violated. So
I shouldn't laugh, but that's silly. That's silly.
Yeah, it is. And there's a lot of silliness, and that's what I try to focus on in my show, because there's a lot of dense, a lot of hard stuff that we're talking about, from the murder rate in Milwaukee.
It's insane down there. It's ridiculous.
Yes,
you guys are going to break another record. You have to. I mean, it is just off the charts down there.
Yeah, homicides are up, I believe, another 20% over 2021, which is up on 2020. Which was the all-time record. We've set all-time records. This is going to be the 3rd year in a row we've set an all-time murder record. And I think your viewers would love this little fact. The all-time murder record before 2020 in the city of Milwaukee was 1991. And the reason for that was because Jeffrey Dahmer's victims were added to the 1991 homicide total. Milwaukee is now deadlier than it was when one of the world's most notorious serial killers was prowling its streets. That's a good perspective on where we are in Milwaukee right now.
And that, as a talk show host, that's a great way to frame it.
I think so. I use that little statistic, that little anecdote all the time. And that's a good way to sort of get the audience to recognize just how bad things are. And, so I've actually got a background in law. I got a law degree years and years and years ago. I haven't practiced because I've been in broadcasting my entire career. Actually, I went right from law school to another radio station, WTMJ. I did a few years. I was the Brewers post-game show host for a couple of years. I was doing news. I was doing a legal advice show. I was doing politics. I was doing all of it, right? And I decided I wanted to devote my life to politics, to really talking about the issues that I was most passionate about. So the way I kind of view my show and the way I kind of view what I do is to approach things as a lawyer would, to try to make the case for whatever it is, whatever idea, whatever politician, whatever it is that I'm trying to advance. So to build that case logically with the law, with the facts, and with a lot of humor thrown in along the way. That's what I hope to do. Anyway.
Well, yeah, a little levity is always a good thing. So when you get to going back to how much time does it take? So you have a guest that's coming on, or let's just say that, or it doesn't matter. An average show. Walk us through when do you start? So it's Tuesday, It's noon right now on Tuesday. You have a show, of course, tomorrow.
Yeah.
When do you start working on tomorrow's show?
Right now.
So as soon as you're finished with this, you're already starting to work on tomorrow.
I sort of view show prep as never ending. I sort of view I believe it was Rush Limbaugh who famously said life is show prep, who kind of pioneered the idea that everything that happens to you goes into your show. Because when you're talking and discussing issues and events and whatever for as long as I do per day, you can't help but reveal a little part of yourself each time.
Sure.
As much I don't talk about like my personal life, or I don't do one of these shows where it's like, well, this happened to me and let's talk about this for 15 minutes,
Sure.
like kind of more of a happy talk
Yeah.
sort of morning show. I don't do that. But if something is happening to me and there's like, I'm always on my phone. Okay. This probably makes me slightly more antisocial than I want to be, but I'm always on Twitter. I'm always, I see Twitter as like the modern day Associated Press newswire, and there used to be like,
Yeah, that's right. Yeah, that's a good analogy.
yeah. So like, I'm always looking for something that's coming in, some news that's happening, some event that's breaking that I might be able to use for the next day's show. So I'm always kind of looking. I'll start at night, probably, I coach my kids' soccer teams and stuff like that. And I've got, various errands to run and things to do as anybody else does. So when all that's done, probably about like, 7:30, 8 o'clock, I'll go on the computer at the kitchen table or in my office at home or something like that, or just, lay in bed or whatever, and just sort of start to think about, okay, what's likely to be the big thing tomorrow? Then I get up usually between 5:30 and 6 a.m. And then I really will just read a whole ton of headlines. I don't actually read physical newspapers anymore, but I'll read pretty much every news site there is to read.
Sure.
And I'll just try to make sure that I am as up to date as possible. Then I've got a number of sites that I'll go to that kind of aggregate stories nationally that really help because they come from kind of a conservative perspective. And that sort of starts in earnest at about 6:30, 7 a.m. And then I'm looking for sound bites, for video clips, audio clips that help make my point of view. And then I'll email the ones that I want to my producer. He'll get them in our computer system. And then 9:06, it's away we go.
So how much, and so when the show is finished, it's finished, right? 11 o'clock, the show's finished. No, the show's done. You're finished.
Yeah.
And then it's already moving on. There is no debrief. There is no really any of that. It's, put that one to bed. Let's move on.
I mean, there is and there isn't. Like, for now, once we get done, I'm probably going to go home. I might lay down for a little bit. I've got some errands that I need to. My wife has a honey-do list a mile long, I'm sure.
Sure.
But there is a period of debrief. I do take time off. I'm not like literally working 24 hours a day, 7 days a week. You're just kind of it's weird. Because I'm only really in the office, give or take 5-6 hours a day, maybe.
Sure.
So while I do have a lot of freedom to be wherever I want to be and do what I want to do, you're also always in the back of your mind thinking about what's coming next, right? So yeah, it's kind of that weird dichotomy of always working and never working.
You are admittingly, I mean, you're a conservative talk show radio show host. If I think I said that right. I'm sure I didn't.
Yeah.
There are others that are like on WISN or on iHeartRadio that are conservatives in Wisconsin. Are there Democrat talk show hosts? Because if there are, I haven't seen them or heard or know about them. Are you familiar with any?
Yeah. I mean, we have a liberal talk radio station. Actually, a friend of mine by the name of Mike Crute. He owns a liberal talk station.
boy, I can't remember what it's called, and this is not an insult. I don't remember. It's
Yeah.
5:40 a.m. in Milwaukee, and he
Oh.
hosts a show with another guy, Dominic, and they're called the Devil's Advocates. That's probably the biggest Democrat liberal talk show. Now, I would argue that you hear liberal talk radio, it's called NPR, 24 hours a day, 7 days a week. But they'll swear up and down they're neutral, but you can always tell the way they slant stories. It may be a soft-spoken voice, and it may sound settling, but they're espousing the exact same liberalism as
yeah, but it sounds nicer.
there are national liberal hosts. Stephanie Miller is one. Tom Hartman, I think, is still doing a show. But the appetite and audience for conservative talk radio is far, far bigger.
Why do you think?
I would argue, what's that?
Why do you think?
Well, I was just going to say, I would argue it's because the way conservatives and liberals think, and this is going to be a generalization, conservatives tend to base a lot of what they view and what they think about issues on how they feel, right? How it makes them feel. Whereas conservatives, as a rule, tend to be more fact-based, results-oriented, if this, then this. That lends itself to more long-form content. The way I view liberal thought is more of it can fit on a bumper sticker. Make love, not war, right? Coexist, that sort of thing.
I get it.
Beyond that, beyond the initial, all right, Donald Trump is a war criminal, or Donald Trump, stole
Is the Antichrist. Right, yeah.
Right, stole documents from the National Archives.
Sure.
And then beyond that, if someone like me were to say, well, okay, no, not really, because this is governed by the Presidential Records Act, which is not a criminal statute, and Trump actually did have the right to take presidential material, as all presidents have, and this is a dispute between him and the National Archives, and the FBI should not be involved. A liberal talk host would more be riling up the emotions of his audience and try to gin up this notion that Donald Trump will very soon be in prison. This is why, because of the prevalence, I think, of MSNBC and a lot of Democrat liberal advocates masquerading as objective journalists, especially in national publications like the New York Times and Washington Post, you got for 4 straight years of the Trump presidency this mistaken belief that the walls were constantly closing in on Trump, that somehow there was going to be an indictment. First, it was Russia collusion. Then it was the Ukraine phone call. Now it was over and over, January 6th, over and over and over and over again, based not on an understanding of the facts or the law, but rather on a sort of wishful thinking that stems from emotional overinvestment in that idea.
Since you are a admittingly conservative, do you get hate mail? And if you do, I mean, first of all, of course you do.
Yeah,
thousands and thousands of people. Of course you do.
It's less hate mail than hate tweets.
Oh yeah, well, Twitter is like a horrible place. Like, we post all our things on Twitter, and when we're finished with this show, we'll post this on Twitter, and we'll tag you that you were on the show. But I never go back and look at any comments, like, ever.
It's probably smart.
It's a horrible place. I mean, it's a wonderful tool. I get it. I just don't. No, thank you. But do you get it? Obviously, there's going to be liberals or conservatives. I'm sorry, liberals or Democrats that are going to not like what you do, but. And I don't know if they listen to you. I'm sure you have demographics or you have stuff on that and data that shows who listens, who doesn't. But do you get it from conservatives? Because I have heard you talk about conservatives. You actually used a word that I had used to reference, not because you heard me say it. It was just interesting. You said the same thing was about Will Martin. And I kept referring to him as like the most impressive person in the race for lieutenant governor. In my opinion, he was the best candidate. It was just my opinion, not like Dryden Wire's opinion. It was just mine. That dude is amazing. He's legit and he's wildly impressive. Well, when you say that, do you get conservatives who love your show, and they're conservatives too, go, yeah, dude, don't do that? Do you get that stuff from conservatives when you share your opinion? Because you hold conservatives and Republicans accountable. If they're doing a great job, you'll say, hey, great job. If not, you're going to hold them accountable. And that can't rub everyone the right way.
It's not necessarily if I say something nice about a candidate, right? Because I don't endorse
Right.
candidates or anything like that. I'll be talking about something that someone disagrees with, and you would be shocked at how many times I will have someone email me and say, I am never listening to you again because of your stance on X. 2 weeks later, they'll email me and say, I am never listening to you again because of your stance on Y. I've actually had that happen a number of times where someone doesn't realize that they've already told me that they're never going to listen to me again. In fact, every time somebody will email me that or tell me that, I'll look up their email address and do a search for it to see if they've ever said anything like that before. So they will. And, the reason for that is because the relationship that you have with listeners is less like a television broadcast where you're very cognizant that you're one of thousands or millions of people watching. Radio, you're alone in your car, you're listening on your earbuds, you're at work. It's a very personal, very intimate form of conversation. So they view you less. And because a lot of conservatives don't trust the media to present news fairly or accurately, and they see us to do the job that the media should, to be honest with them, they see us less as a broadcaster than as a trusted friend. So as a result of that, there's far more of an emotional investment in there. So it's not like, oh, well, I disagree with what you're saying. It's you, Dan O'Donnell, have let me down personally. You see what I'm saying?
I do.
And it took a while for me to kind of understand where that was coming from, that there is that personal relationship and people view you as a trusted confidant, not just as like a product that they consume on a daily basis.
And with access now with Twitter and social media and you saying the show, call the show, here's the number, your email address, your all these contact stuff. It's not like if I watch Gayle King in the morning,
right,
and I disagree with her, I can't contact her. But we feel this connection also because of social media and because of on your show, you say, here's our number, here's all of our stuff. They feel as though they can contact you and share that information.
Right. And much more than, say, like a national host.
Right.
We had Rush Limbaugh for many, many years, and Clay Travis and Buck Sexton are the national hosts that took Rush's time slot. We are in the community. I'm somebody who you might see at Walmart, right? I'm somebody who lives here too. And there's that personal connection there that's developed as well.
When you do have guests on, and you don't have to say any names, that's fine. How would you describe a good guest? So it isn't necessarily tell me a good guest, but what makes a good guest for you as the radio show host and you're interviewing or chatting with someone? What are your favorite kind of guests? What does that look like?
It's the same thing that makes good conversation. I mean, when you're at a party, do you want to be talking to someone who is almost talking past you and just sort of spitting out talking points? Or do you want someone who's engaging, who's funny, who's just that you have rapport with? So it's the same thing that makes for good conversation, makes for a good guest. One of the best, I felt like we had amazing rapport, was actually Sean Duffy, longtime congressman and longtime your congressman.
Right up in here, the predecessor for Tom Tiffany.
And he and I just, for whatever reason, hit it off. We did a bit for many years where he would come on my show on St. Patrick's Day because we're both of Irish descent. And it was a free-flowing, fun conversation that had jokes, that had good information, but that was always just, above all else, a conversation. You know what I'm saying? Like it was just easy to get him to talk. And I can't think off the top of my head someone who just wasn't very good at that. But the best sort of guests, I don't want to call anybody out, obviously, but the best sort of guests are the ones that are just good at the art of conversation.
Yeah, I've had a few guests on, and I have no problem saying names. I like all these people individually, but I certainly won't. But yeah, it's so how's the campaign going, or how you doing? And the answer is good.
Yeah,
Frick, this is gonna be a long show.
How was your day at school? Oh, fine. How'd the test go? Pretty good.
I'm like, this show's gonna. Oh man, like 10 minutes in, like this is killing me. Yeah, like Adam, like my. Well, I will say the single guest or the positive ones. The one-time guest was Ted Nugent. That show was a trip, man. So he was. I mean, talk about, you had mentioned before, be good and entertaining, and I always believe that.
Yeah.
Every show should either be good or entertaining, ideally both. He was so entertaining. That was so much fun. In terms of recurring guests, Adam Jarko still is one of my favorite. Now, I do a show. We've done like 109 episodes every Tuesday with Barron County Sheriff Chris Fitzgerald, who, yes, technically is a Democrat, but don't care. The dude is just legit. My dad was a sheriff here. I'm sure you don't know that part. In Washburn County, he has so much respect for Chris Fitzgerald. So we do a show. We did one this morning. But you're right. When you get that rapport, we can have these, it's just a conversation. Yeah. We're not talking about the political part like when he and I are on. We literally call the show Positive Tuesday with Ben and Fitzy. It's meant to be positive and good things, but there's some heavy stuff. When the George Floyd situation happened, we had to talk about it. It's like when you say positive, it doesn't necessarily mean everything is just rainbows and puppies and everyone's laughing. But it's also a way to show we can talk about this respectfully and have a conversation. But this is how you should do it. You don't have to hate someone else for that. I'm a man of faith. Other people aren't. I don't push my faith on anyone else. That's fine. You do you. But I think that's an okay conversation to have. It's okay to be kind of who you are. But Adam Jarko was always one of my favorite recurring guests because that guy is funny. He's insightful. He will unapologetically, this is where I stand. This is what I think. If you like it, great. If not, pound sand. I like that. Right? Just tell me what you think and what you feel, but he doesn't go too far. I liked Adam. You've had him on the show. What did you think of Adam, and why do you think he lost that election?
One issue. He has never been a prosecutor. Eric Toney was. That was it.
Okay.
Honest to goodness.
Okay.
That was the long and short of it. That race, as you know, was incredibly close, and I think that was the thing that pushed just enough voters over to Toney to decide it.
Yeah. Who do you think for the elections coming up? I've listened to your show and you've been talking about the polls, that there always seem to be very heavy Democrat at the very beginning, or I could be misremembering exactly what you were saying, but it was they tend to favor Democrats kind of at the beginning, but then, how does that work? So could you explain for people who didn't listen to those, or hear those, but I've heard you talk about that before.
Yes, it is a weird phenomenon that the farther you are out from an election, the more likely the Democrat is to have a substantial lead. Now, am I suggesting some vast conspiracy? No. Do I think that pollsters kind of overestimate Democrat turnout and what the electorate is going to look like 6 months before an election? Yes, I do. Case in point was 2016, the United States Senate race between Ron Johnson and Russ Feingold, a rematch of 2010, when Johnson, in a big upset, big Republican year, unseated the longtime incumbent Russ Feingold. In something like 30 different polls that you can find on a great website. If your listeners or viewers are looking for a great site for polling and everything, it's called realclearpolitics.com.
Sure.
In only one of the 30-some polls done in the Real Clear Politics average, so Marquette poll, you had New York Times, you had NBC News, everybody's polling this race. In only one of every one of the polls that was done did Ron Johnson have a lead. Johnson beat Feingold in that election by about 3 points. Polls that were being done in August, including the Marquette poll, which is considered the gold standard of polling in Wisconsin,
apparently
had Feingold up 11 points. 11 points. That's a 14-point error in favor of the Democrat. Am I suggesting that the pollster there, Charles Franklin, is biased or is trying to shape a narrative? No. But what I can tell you is that these sorts of polls are used to shape the narrative and have been this summer that Republicans are in big trouble. Oh my goodness, look out. Republicans are in big trouble. I don't know if you've noticed, but in the Johnson Barnes race, Johnson in the latest Marquette poll went from 52-45 down to 49-48 up. In two other polls, New York Times, Siena, and Civics, Johnson is leading among independents, which generally points to a win in the election. In fact, Johnson, most prognosticators say his race is probably leans Republican. In a toss-up state like Wisconsin, that's about as close to a lock as you're going to get. I'm, of course, not going to say that Johnson is a lock to win,
Well, sure.
but I think he's definitely favored, even though all of the polling up to this past week and a half has showed that Barnes was actually leading. So it is a unique phenomenon, and the Republican always seems to close strong in the final weeks. You never have a race where the Republican gets out to a huge lead, and then another case in point, 2016 presidential race.
Yeah.
Donald Trump was down significantly. There was a poll in 2020, I think it was NBC, that was just a couple of weeks before Election Day, 2020, that showed Joe Biden in Wisconsin up 12 points. 12. He won by less than a percentage point. How do you get these sorts of results? Given the historical trends, I think it is more likely than not that Tim Michels wins the governorship, that Ron Johnson retains his Senate seat, and that Republicans win up and down the ballot, because for the past several decades, Wisconsin has sort of swung with those trends. Like every midterm election, in fact, it's only happened once, I believe, since we went to a 4-term governorship, that a candidate has won the governorship when his party controlled the White House. That was Tommy Thompson. I think he did it twice. All right. So that should kind of tell you where, historically speaking, things stand right now.
When it comes to Ron Johnson, I think it was Eric Bott, who was on a week or two ago, and he had said that one of the biggest challenges for Ron Johnson isn't necessarily the challenge, because everybody knows who he is. Like in these polls, I think he kind of walked through some of that stuff, that there's not a lot of undecideds when it comes to Ron Johnson. But the biggest thing is for Mandela Barnes, people getting to know him, because most people really, even, he's the lieutenant governor, but most people really don't know anything about him. I don't know how it is where you are in southeastern Wisconsin, but in northwest Wisconsin, we support our law enforcement. I mean, it's no questions, ifs, ands, ors, or buts about it. There's a lot of things kind of coming out about Mandela Barnes. You had just mentioned that there was a previous Marquette poll that had Mandela Barnes in the lead, and now he has him trailing Senator Johnson. Do you think the defund the police, specifically that, I know there's the ICE thing too, but rural northwest Wisconsin, it doesn't seem to be as big as a talking point. Good, bad, right, wrong, other, I don't know. But the defund the police, man, that moves the needle for people up here. Now, if you're a Democrat, you'll probably vote for him anyway. But I'm saying there's a lot of people who are finding out about this. Now I'm kind of not wanting to defund the police when, yeah, but you do actually, or you did. Do you think that is playing a role in that poll?
That to me is the biggest issue. And the proof is sort of in an ad that I don't know if you see as much in northwestern Wisconsin. You're on YouTube. If you go on YouTube, and given my browsing history, I'm probably seeing way more political ads than the average person, right? Because the algorithm says, oh, this guy is looking up all sorts of politics stuff. So,
right.
Every Mandela Barnes ad, a pre-roll YouTube video, meaning the ads that you see that you can't skip, you can't fast forward through on YouTube, is Mandela Barnes looking straight at the camera and saying, my opponents are lying about me. They're saying I want to defund the police. I won't. I'll provide police with as much money as they need. Now, I know that's a lie. Mandela Barnes has wanted to defund the police since before. He was like the original defund the police candidate. I mean, before it was trendy. He's like one of these guys who gets into an indie band before they blow up and tells everybody, "Yeah, I liked Imagine Dragons
That's a great analogy.
before their first hit single."
Yeah.
He's saying, like, I was trying to defund the police before George Floyd in 2020. Now, of course, he realizes how politically toxic that is. And the fact that he is running so many ads trying to rebut what I think to be the absolute truth, that he wants to cut police budgets, that he actually authored a bill when he was in the state legislature to eliminate cash bail. I mean, this is how radical this guy's ideas are. And now he's trying to run away from them. And it's sort of the sum total. The reason he went from 7 points up to 1 point down is because Johnson has done a fantastic job through his ads casting Barnes as a radical whose ideas are simply dangerous for Wisconsinites.
Can Tony win the AG's race?
Yes, absolutely. This is one where I think whichever party wins the governor's race and whichever party, I just don't see there being all that many split ticket voters anymore.
On that one.
There might be more this year just because Barnes is so radical and he is so far left. Whereas as radical as Tony Evers' policies have been, he's very effective in presenting himself as, oh, gee whiz, oh, shucks.
Yeah. Folks, he says folks all the time in press releases on the, hey, listen, folks. Yeah, he comes across like, grandpa. Oh, he's a nice guy.
Exactly. Even though he was desperately trying to reduce Wisconsin's prison population by 50%, and has essentially thrown open the prison doors to all manner of criminals, thereby making Wisconsin far more dangerous, even though he was an absolute failure at getting people their unemployment benefits during the shutdown, even though he was blatantly violating the state constitution and state law by continuing his emergency order so he could have a statewide mask mandate. Now, obviously, I'm saying this as someone who's an avowed partisan, but
those are pretty accurate, though, actually. I mean, you're not saying that as a partisan thing. Those are actual, real life facts. That did actually happen.
And, the thing is that the average voter, though, still sees, well, he's Tony Evers. He's just this folksy guy.
Yeah.
And you might see some split ticket voters, but with respect to down ballot, I think not enough people know who Josh Call or Eric Toney are. And they're just going to vote based on whatever letter is after their name.
Whatever they after the name of D or an R, right. Oop. All right, he's frozen. I only had one more question for him, too. Doggone it. If you can still hear us, sign out and sign back in. Or, don't. Oh, there you are. Hey.
Okay, there we go.
All right, I'm going to boot you out. Click on it and sign back in. Good. I have one more question for him. I want to ask. Shoot. Oh, there we go. Oh, nope, he's not on. That could be the end of the show, folks. Listen, folks, that could be the end of the show, folks. Yeah, I don't think it's working, buddy. He's trying to sign back in, but it's, hey.
There we go.
Yeah, there we go. So,
you got me?
Yeah, I do. Real quickly here. Down there in southeastern Wisconsin. Yeah, southeastern Wisconsin. On the topic of Josh Call. I've talked to sheriffs in northwest Wisconsin, district attorneys and judges. And every single one I talked to, when I asked them, Josh Call. We had, jeepers. Who was his predecessor? Who's the attorney general?
Or, excuse me.
Try the.
Oh, wait.
I just text him like.
You got me, Brad Schimmel.
Brad Schimmel. Oh, there we go. Thank you.
Schimmel.
Yep. So, and some people liked him. Some people, it was like, whatever. He's pretty good, but he always had cops backs and law enforcement and the DA's office, etc. When I asked every single one about Josh Call, what do you think? Not one has said one positive thing. And I'm not making that up. That's not a Republican. Some of these are Democrats. Some are independents. I'm saying nobody, not one has said, Actually, he gets a bad rap, but he's actually pretty legit. Everyone said, tool, waste of time, waste of space, get rid of that guy. I don't care who it is. Anyone can be better than that guy. And I've never heard that about any candidate for running for anything in the 7 years I've been doing this. What do you hear about Josh Colvin, the people that you talk to in law enforcement, in the crime and court world?
Same thing.
Why? That's just so weird. And I'm not trying to bang on the dude. I don't know anything about him. All I know is that's what I'm told from all the people who do know him or about the AG's office.
Because the modern Democratic Party has exposed itself as being anti-cop. They spent an entire summer in 2020 saying the police were the enemy. Josh Call himself, after the Jacob Blake shooting, sat on evidence that would show that shooting to be totally justified, right? He didn't come out until 3 days after and said Jacob Blake was armed with a knife, right? Yeah. Jacob Blake had a knife. He also didn't say what was known immediately, that Jacob Blake was actually at his estranged girlfriend's house and was attempting to kidnap their children and steal her van. Now, Cole knew that, but in order to keep the narrative going that this was a poor, unarmed black man who was trying to break up a fight between two people and was shot by an officer who was, I don't know, out for blood. That's what you want to know. You want to know why cops don't like Josh Call? It's because of that sort of nonsense right there. And it happens time and time again. You had Mandela Barnes say in a press conference, we don't have all the facts, but we do know this didn't feel like bad police work. This felt like a vendetta being taken out against a member of the black community. What? Excuse me? Had Jacob Blake gotten away, there would have been an Amber Alert issued for those kids. Yeah. Right? This was an attempted kidnapping. This was an armed kidnapping. And we're to believe that, oh, well, it was a racist attack. And when you've got a guy like Call as the state's top cop, essentially sitting on evidence that would clear this cop from these racist smears, it's no surprise that other law enforcement officers know this.
Last question. If you weren't doing what you do, what would you do?
Oh, I'd probably be a lawyer.
What?
I think I'd be a constitutional lawyer. I'd work for some conservative think tank. I'd probably get into politics myself. That probably would be my calling.
Dan, it's been an absolute pleasure talking to you. You're welcome on anytime. I know we've had some audio issues, some video issues.
We'll have a better internet connection.
That's fine. It is what it is. But no kidding. Thank you so much, Dan. Is there anything that you wanted to say or talk about that we didn't get a chance to talk about?
Well, just to thank you, Ben. I really do appreciate you having me on. I'll definitely take you up on that whenever you want me on.
Love it.
I'd be happy to come. I won't go in my office, though. I think there's lead lining these walls that's preventing a good Wi-Fi connection.
Awesome. Thank you so much, brother.
You bet.
All right. No, it looks like I'm having audio issues too. Well, it doesn't matter. Special thank you to our guest, Wisconsin conservative talk radio host Dan O'Donnell from The Dan O'Donnell Show, for taking the time to come on and chat with us today. This Thursday, I will be chatting with Democrat nominee in the 7th Congressional District, Dick Hossman. I think that's how you say his name. And next Tuesday, Barron County Sheriff Chris Fitzgerald and I will be back for another episode of Positive Tuesday with Ben and Fitzy. So until then, for DrydenWire.com, I'm Ben Dryden saying thank you for watching, and as always, have a blessed day.